You're listening to Murder Not Murdering with Erin,
and Autumn,
a true crime podcast about murder and murdering.
but we are not murderers.
Hey everybody, it's Erin from Murder Not Murdering, all by myself because Autumn is unfortunately not able to be at this recording. She's not feeling so great, and we wish her all of the health and to be feeling better very soon. I've been trying to think about what I was going to say at the beginning of this episode. Sometimes that's hard when I don't have someone talking back. So it's just me talking by myself in my studio all alone. And I just couldn't think of what to talk about. So I decided to talk about how I feel and how I've been feeling. This is an interesting platform to do that on, as this reaches so many people. And, it's a big platform to just talk about how I feel. But that's what I feel like doing right now. And so that's what I'm going to do. I've had a pretty hard year so far, and I know that sounds like a lot, saying that I've had a hard year when I think so many people have had a hard year, and the current climate doesn't help anything. It definitely does not give you happy, good vibes and make you want to feel like everything's going to be okay. I think I've needed for a while to hear like everything is going to be okay. And then the media does not help at all, because it just gets you down, and every day there's something new and something else. And it's just been a lot lately. A couple months ago, my father passed away. We had a really kind of complicated relationship, and he lost his battle with dementia. It is a very difficult disease and really hard to deal with as a family member, and I'm his only daughter and his only person that was caring for him. So it was really tough, and it had been a decade of dealing with losing him a little at a time, and then losing the relationship that I never was really able to have. So that was a lot and really complicated grief. And then not long after, maybe a month or two after he passed, I came home one day with my daughter and found my 6-year-old Great Dane, who I loved, had died just in his sleep, I think. I think he must have had some sort of heart attack or something. It was really hard. And losing him was really tough. And to have that on top of the grief I was already feeling and the physical loss of something that was a big part of my life and a huge creature that lived in my home was really hard. And I've just been having a tough time with that. I don't know what else to say. I'm just trying to be really honest. And I've been super busy and working really hard, and I love that. Work is a wonderful distraction. Part of my job too is DJing, and DJing allows me to connect to music, and music is healing for me. It's a massive outlet. We joke all the time about me singing karaoke, but singing karaoke almost feels like music therapy sometimes, and it's really helpful. I've been listening to a lot of music and getting lost in my headphones, and it feels really good to do that. That has been helpful. And with everything that's going on, I also have been part of a book club with my friend Tim, who we talk about often because he's one of our mutual friends and just one of the best human beings I know on the planet. I don't know what I would have done without him and Autumn throughout losing my dad and everything that's been going on. But I have a book club that I do with him. Also a nice distraction. There's a theme. I love having distractions. It's very helpful when trying to process things. But we were reading Cher's book in our book club, and that was really fun. And I thought her book was great. And then we don't meet for another week. So I started reading another book, one that I've had for a long time. And it is Rebel Girl by Kathleen Hanna. I saw her when she was in town for promoting her book. And that was amazing. It was just amazing to be in that room with her. And she was also there with Lindy West, who's another incredible writer. I love her books. She is amazing. So it was just an incredible place to be at with these two amazing female writers and musicians. And the room itself felt great to be a part of. I feel like I've needed more and more of that super feminine energy. It's really helpful for me. And in part of reading this book, I've had it for, probably close to a year now. And I just haven't had a chance to sit down and really make time for it. And it's kind of a hard read for me a little bit because it does discuss sexual assault and domestic violence. And sometimes I find that hard to hear as someone who has been a victim of that, but also helpful to not feel alone. And I think that if I have anything to say right now is just that I hope that people don't feel alone. And if you are feeling alone, you're not. 9 times out of 10, someone else understands, or someone else is grieving, or someone else is also going through something. So it's nice to have that reminder every once in a minute. I don't mean to bring everybody down. I think with everything going on, I think about legacy. And I think, obviously I've been thinking a lot about what's left behind, as I recently was. So I think about that and what I want to leave behind. And I think part of the reason why I do this podcast is because I don't want people to feel alone or that there's not a way out. I think so often we talk about women that are in situations or people that don't find a way out, and this is what happens, or someone who is mentally unwell or controlling or a psychopath, literally. And it's important to speak about those victims and talk about the uglier side of things, because it's part of our human condition. It's part of our human condition to try to connect to other people and other things. And though we don't ever know what's really going on or how things properly went down, since we weren't in the room, you try to use forensics, you try to do all kinds of things to understand what had happened. But I think it's important to highlight that no matter what the situation is, there's always a way to find how to escape or how to save yourself. And there's nothing wrong with doing whatever you can. In reading the book, Rebel Girl, it has been another secondary musical awakening for me. I think sometimes I forget of that type of music or that time of music for women that is so cutting, and it reminds me how strong we need to be right now, and that we need to stick together, and we need to speak up for other women. We need to check in with our BIPOC friends. We need to check in with our LGBTQIA plus friends, because they're feeling something even more extraordinary right now in this time. More importantly than anything else, I think we just need to remember that we do care about each other and that we are all human beings. And I think that that's important. So that's my PSA. I hope it makes some sort of sense, and that you understand that you just never know what's going on with someone else. But what you can do is be there to support them. And if you can't do that because that might be too hard for you in that moment, then just know that you're not alone and that we're all in this together. So on that note, let me tell you a story. So this week, I'm not starting with a title. I'm starting with a question. Can wickedness hide under such an appearance of innocence? That chilling question once headlined a newspaper article, and this week leads our story. Because today's story isn't about a young bride or a murder trial. It's about a woman whose beauty seemed to enchant everyone around her, and whose name would eventually become synonymous with suspicion, scandal, and tragedy. This is the story of Minnie Wallace Walkup Ketcham. Minnie was born January 14th, 1869 in New Orleans. Her father, James Elijah Wallace, was a prominent lawyer, and her mother was Elizabeth Hagan. They descended from aristocratic Creole roots. Minnie grew up surrounded by refinement, wealth, education, and the comforts of a Southern upbringing. She would later recall, "I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by people who were well-bred and used to the nicer things in life. Amid those surroundings, I early acquired a taste for the refinements and elegancies." Minnie was dreamy, quiet, bookish, and as she grew, something else, heartbreakingly beautiful. Her hazel eyes, porcelain skin, and rosy lips turned the heads wherever she went. And it was at the 1884 Great Exposition in New Orleans, a celebration of post-war Southern progress, that Minnie's life took a sudden and fateful turn. At just 15 years old, Minnie had caught the eye of J.R. Walkup, a 52-year-old former mayor of Emporia, Kansas, and wealthy businessman. He visited the exposition with a friend who was invited to stay at the Wallace home. Walkup was taken, no, bewitched by the young girl, despite their age gap. This wasn't new to Minnie by that point. She had already been pursued by many suitors, but J.R. Walkup was persistent. In Minnie's own words, she said, "It soon became apparent he was in love with me. Of course, I did not love a man past 50 years of age, with daughters and a son older than I." After visiting New Orleans for a while, he went back to Emporia and returned soon with his unmarried daughter. He urged his suit, and it was accepted. They were married on July 22nd, 1885. Minnie was 16 years old. She moved into his elegant Kansas mansion. The rooms were lavish. A full-time staff waited on her. But just 1 month into their marriage, things took a deadly turn. On August 15th, Walkup returned from a trip to Topeka. That night, he fell violently ill. Nausea, diarrhea, and leg cramps. Classic signs of strychnine poisoning. Dr. Luther Jacobs treated him, thinking it could possibly be indigestion or cholera, and he recovered briefly. The next day, Minnie went downtown to purchase arsenic. She said it was for cosmetic use. Arsenic was, disturbingly, a popular skin lightener at the time. But what if that wasn't the real reason? On Tuesday, Walkup grew ill again. No fever, more cramps. Dr. Jacobs began treating him with morphine. He rallied once more. By Thursday, he was feeling so much better that he ate canned oysters and drank soda. But shortly after, he began vomiting and spiraling fast. Minnie called Dr. Jacobs, blaming the oysters for the illness. But the doctor began to suspect something else. Poison. Arsenic, to be exact. He tried to collect a urine sample, but Walkup's kidneys had already failed. Meanwhile, word was spreading. Minnie had purchased arsenic. She administered all of his medicine. And now his children and the entire town of Emporia were beginning to whisper. Daily updates of his condition and speculation of Minnie's possible involvement was in the newspaper, so it spread like wildfire. Then, on Sunday, August 23rd, 1885, J.R. Walkup died. The Times-Picayune reported, visitors were generally prohibited access to the chamber of the rapidly sinking man. The young wife was in the room. She caressed the dying man with the greatest apparent tenderness, kissing his lips and forehead passionately and imploring him to say if he knew her. She was only allowed in with him if a doctor was present, as they truly suspected her, no matter how she seemed like a caring wife. And when the town found out that he had died, Emporia erupted. Newspaper extras were issued and sold in enormous numbers. Minnie was placed under house arrest. The town was in chaos. And the Times said knots of agitated citizens during all of Friday night and Saturday morning discussed the event in the streets. As evidence of foul play on the part of his wife increased, a guard was mounted upon the residence and grounds. They patrolled the premises during the early morning hours of Saturday to prevent the escape of the young and beautiful woman who was suspected of the murder of the man to whom, less than 1 month ago, she had been married. Doctors performed an autopsy. His stomach and intestines were found to be full of corrosive poison, arsenic. But here's where things get complicated. Walkup, it turned out, had a secret. He had been taking arsenic for years, believing it would heighten his sexual prowess and protect him from STDs, which he was quite prone to given his appetite for sex workers. 2 physicians even testified to treating him for gonorrhea and treating his lady friends too on his behalf. The trial was a media showdown. The largest courtroom in Emporia was modified to seat 300 people, and the witness stand was placed on a platform so all could see the testimony. At times, as many as 2/3 of the spectators were women. When the trial started, the public was evenly divided, for and against Minnie. The defense argued that he had poisoned himself accidentally through chronic use, but there was no records of him buying arsenic. You had to sign something to buy a substance that could be deadly. Minnie's purchases were documented, and that arsenic that she purchased, she said it was unopened, but conveniently, she dropped the package while handing it to authorities before it was weighed, so they couldn't prove either way that any had come out of it. Dr. Charles W. Scott of Kansas City testified that in the fall of 1884, J.R. Walkup had visited him complaining of abdominal pains. He said Walkup volunteered that he was taking pills that were a combination of arsenic and opium, and that they were not prescribed. Remember, this was also when people would take mercury and cocaine to treat small ailments. So it wasn't that uncommon to treat with things of this nature. Next up, in what the New Orleans Daily Picayune called a carnival of filth, Walkup's sex life was paraded before the courts. Pimps, fellow cavorters, and the doctors who treated Mr. Walkup and his ladies of the night for sexual transmitted diseases told all. The problem was, for the defense, that all of these witnesses were from out of town. So it seemed a little bit suspicious. At least to me it does. At trial, Minnie took the stand. The courtroom was packed. The twice-a-week messenger reported. The climax of the case was reached as Mrs. Walkup was placed on the stand. She was beautiful and well-schooled, and before she finished giving testimony, the lawyers, jurymen, and judge wept, and the stenographer's eyes were so blinded that he could not see to write. The girl captured the hearts of all, and they were ready to swear that she was innocent of the crime that laid at her door. She was just 17, beautiful, poised, and tragic. After 52 hours of deliberation, Minnie Wallace Walkup was acquitted. One juror said, "If I had voted for that little girl's conviction, her face would haunt me to my dying day." Because of the public scrutiny, Minnie did not attend Mr. Walkup's funeral, but she stood on the porch draped in her mourning gown, with her head bowed as the procession passed. She stayed until the last carriage went by. The trial of Minnie Walkup had gotten national publicity. Many show business folks contacted her to capitalize on this moment. Minnie declined all of them and moved away from Emporia with the fortune she had inherited. Speaking of that fortune, the 17-year-old had just inherited $500,000, about $16 million in today's money. And she moved back to New Orleans. She traveled, studied, lived in Europe, and in 1894 bought a home in Chicago. She was elegant, magnetic, untouchable. The beautiful girl had become a more beautiful woman, whose poise was that of a duchess and whose intelligence and wit charmed all. Her house became a gathering place for brilliant men and women. Then another man entered her life. While attending the Paris Exposition in 1889, she met a retired millionaire lumber merchant named John B. Ketcham, who visited her in New Orleans years before. Ketcham fell under her spell. He was older and had been sick from a life of heavy drinking. Again, he was very persistent. What happened next? Well, in 1897, he died in Minnie's home, just 12 days after they had a secret wedding. She explained that she and her suitor had kept their love a secret because they didn't want comments on the discrepancy between their ages. Because of her history, an autopsy was performed. It was proven that Mr. Ketcham had died of acute alcoholism. He had left his entire fortune to Minnie. His family was fired up and hotly protested this marriage and the will. Again, the media had a field day, as it had only been 12 days since their marriage that he died. He had left her $300,000, roughly $10,500,000 today. Joe Keller, the Ketcham's valet, was taken into police custody and grilled for hours. He had been there during the marriage and also witnessed them together. Minnie was heartbroken over her new husband's death and devastated by his brother's contest to the will. They threw out all kinds of accusations. At one point, they tried to say that Mr. Ketcham wasn't even at the wedding, which was untrue. In an article written by Minnie after his death, she said, "In view of the many untruthful, exaggerated accounts of those unhappy days that are current in the papers, it is the only justice to myself and to those friends who have ever stood ready to assist and defend me to state the facts as they occurred. It is unnecessary to dwell upon my recent bereavement, for the papers have made those most private and sacred affairs of my life and heart matters of comment." And she stated, "Knowing Mr. Ketcham's weakness about drink, I delayed our marriage from time to time, hoping for my sake he would stop drinking. Each day he would say, 'To prove my gratitude for all the tenderness you have shown me, and in justice to yourself, let us be married quietly in Milwaukee.' In all the disgrace that had been thrust upon me, the words of the man who died in my arms and called me wife will live in my memory to console me and make me brave. I have been bitterly assailed by George Ketcham in the lobbies of different hotels and clubs wherein he is endeavoring to create a sentiment hostile to me. George had been somewhat estranged from his brother before his death. It was Minnie who pushed Mr. Ketcham to reconcile with his brothers, and he did that. And now they were going after Minnie. Minnie was criticized by the media for returning his remains to his family, insinuating that she didn't care. But what she knew was that John's mother was very devoted to him. She had just suffered a stroke, and it was her wishes that he be placed at the family plot. Minnie wrote about this, saying, "As he belonged to me wholly and truly in life, I felt that it was taking a little from me to give back his ashes to her who had given him life." As far as his will went, the document was duly signed and witnessed, and Minnie inherited her husband's entire estate. Mr. Ketcham's lawyer also stated that he was absolutely in his right mind and capable of administering property. So, what's next for Mrs. Minnie Wallace Walkup Ketcham? A paper once asked her why she had given her heart and hand to two such elderly men, and she said, "Their knowledge of life fascinates me. A man must know how to woo a woman to win me, and young men have not the experience." Enter her most haunting suitor, Delancey Horton Louderback. And yes, I know, that's a hell of a name. 20 years her senior and already married, he begged Minnie to marry him once his sick wife had died. Minnie and Louderback traveled and spent time together. His wife said that he spent a small fortune on her. He lavished her with gifts. He was intensely jealous of the woman who had captured his heart. Minnie's beauty naturally brought to her the glances and attention of men wherever she went. Outbursts of frantic rage could be heard whenever the two appeared in public. He would continually rave. Every man in the world was conspiring to take her from him. And it was about this time that he built her the house within a house. It was named Ravenswood. The house within a house is exactly what it was. A beautiful mansion, the outer shell built of massive stone, whose strength and thickness are not apparent on looking at the exterior. Windows and doors are reinforced with steel, and within this is the inside house. This house is separated from the outer covering by a large space enough to enable a man to walk everywhere between, and also to allow guards to be placed there if necessary. Within this space are said to have been secret passages, loopholes, listening posts used for all types of surveillance. Friends of Delancey Louderback said that the place became a mania with him, and that he boasted continually that no one will ever reach the inner dwelling, the sanctuary, as he called it, without his knowledge or permission, keeping all men away from Minnie. Building this palace paradise cost him $1 million, and the furnishings that he and Minnie had picked out together tallied nearly the same amount. The total would have been around $67 million today. On this very day that Minnie was supposed to move into Ravenswood, she took her trunks and just left. She moved to London. She didn't say anything to Mr. Louderback. My suspicions were that his obsessiveness and possessiveness may have been what pushed her to fully leave the country. In total, Louderback had given her $3 million, not counting gifts and jewels. That would have been around $100 million today. He was not dissuaded and sent her letters constantly. Years would pass until 9 had gone by. And then Louderback's wife died, making him free to marry Minnie. Letters that she had sent him from across the ocean had carried many promises from her. saying that as soon as his wife had died, she would become his bride. I think she was possibly humoring him, as his obsession would probably have brought him to her door, and she did not want that. On the very day that he cabled Minnie, notifying her and instructing her to start for America immediately to fulfill her promise, she sent a cable back. She told him that she had finally found the love of her life, a captain in His Majesty's Royal Guard, and she would not be marrying him. This devastated Mr. Louderback, and he went to his medicine cabinet and took enough cyanide to do the job. After he passed, the will was read, and despite the falling out, he had left a quarter of his fortune to Minnie. Rumors swirled. Had Minnie orchestrated this too? Had she poisoned him from afar? Or was he just another man destroyed by obsession? After that, Minnie disappeared from public view. During World War I, her husband, the captain, and her true love was killed in action. She lived the rest of her life quietly, devoted to philanthropy. She died in San Diego on May 10th, 1957, going by the name Estelle Minnie Keating. So now I'll ask again, can wickedness hide under such an appearance of innocence? Was Minnie Wallace Walkup Ketcham a heartless killer, a gold-digging black widow, or just a young woman caught in a cycle of tragedy and obsession, surviving in a world that will never allow her to be anything but an ornament or a villain? We may never know, but the whispers of her story still echo. My sources were Bayou Justice, Find a Grave, Grunge.com, Briefcase, Unknown Gender History, Mysterious Chicago, and many articles from newspapers.com. I will be posting photos of the beautiful Minnie, her husband's and lovers' court sketches, and the infamous House Within a House on our Instagram page at Murder Not Murdering and TikTok at mnm.pod. So make sure to follow us there and see all about Minnie's life. Here's my take on Minnie. I think it's possible she may have killed her first husband. There's the fact that she got the strychnine first and then was nearly caught in him being poisoned. So then she moved on to arsenic, which she bought amounts from several pharmacies. Definitely not what you would need for cosmetics. She said that it wasn't open and then dropped the container, so they couldn't prove anything. Then all of her witnesses were from out of town. Her mom had sent a prominent and influential judge to be her guardian during the trial too. To me, it seems like a cover-up. The autopsy did not show that her husband had chronic use of arsenic, but that lethal doses were used near the end of his life. Now, her second husband, though he was older, he was sick when he started courting her. I think she might have been there to comfort him and possibly had this affinity for an older man because her husband had just died. And, I don't know that she was in love with her first. I don't think she was in love with her first husband, as she said herself, but she may have loved her second husband with the way that she's talked about him. I don't think it wasn't until she met her last husband that she truly found love. I think she humored Mr. Louderback, and it was probably nice to be doted on. As she said, she liked the finer things in life. I think the first time around, being that she was 15 when they met and then she was 16 when they got married, I think it was probably really hard to be with a man in his 50s and, doing all the things that wives are supposed to do. And then he would disappear and go on business trips, and she was alone in this big house with his kids who are older than her. It would have been really hard, and you wouldn't be able to get out of that. So I don't know what the case is with that one. But I don't think that there was any more conspiracies. I don't think she had anything to do with Louderback's death while she was away. I think he was a psychotic stalker and created this insane home. Wait till you see the pictures of it. So I don't know. I am glad that she did experience love at one point with the husband before he passed away in the war. But I think it was still important to tell Minnie's story. I think it's also, as I was speaking about feminism earlier, I think it's important to remember it wasn't that long ago that women were able to have a credit card without their husband, or that we were getting jobs and homemaker wasn't the only option for us. You know, I think so often we forget about that a little bit, you know, and I think abortion rights and all the things that go along with that are really important. And right now, what we are not going to do is go back in time. I do not want to be in one of those places where you're locked into a loveless marriage for money because you don't have any other options. That's what our future will look like if we don't stand up and speak out. So at this time, I am going to end this podcast, but I'm going to tell you that for me, to make my little heart happy, please go out and listen to some feminist punk music. It makes me happy. And if anything, you might learn something new or discover a genre that you didn't necessarily know that you loved. I would recommend to listen to, obviously, Bikini Kill, Julie Ruin. Now I'm just naming La Tigra. We'll just go through that gambit. L7, Bratmobile, Taco Cat. Who Is She? Who played at the rink once. It was amazing. I love them. There's so many incredible musicians that came out of Seattle, not just during that time, but are happening right now. Like Lemon Boy is really great. I love them. They were awesome. I've seen them live. There's just a lot of really great music coming out, and I think it's really healing. So if that helps you like it does me, then awesome. Anyway, we will be back next week with another episode. Episodes come out on Monday. Follow us on all the social medias. Share with your friends, and we will see you then. Thanks for listening. Bye.